Greetings. Something a little different this time. So, I recently watched Scavengers Reign, which is a animated series, 12 episodes. It was on HBO Max, I think 2023. Netflix picked it up, and I saw it just recently. And Scavengers Reign, after their deep space freighter is damaged, the stranded crew of the Demeter must fight to survive on a beautiful yet dangerous planet. Yeah, so the cargo ship Demeter um, tries to shave some time off its route by, and there's flashbacks as to why. But that's, and well, I'm not going to do spoilers. I mean, I might spoil a tiny bit. Um, it tries by flying close to the sun around which orbits the planet Vesta. As it does so, a solar event, a flare of some sort, smashes into the Demeter, and the Demeter is badly damaged, and some of the crew's already in cryo sleep, I believe, and then many of the crew the rest of the crew that are awake, are forced into lifeboats. And they, fly down to the planet. And the story follows three groups of survivors as they try to survive and then subsequently try to escape this alien, dangerous planet Vesta. So you have three main groups of survivors. Other folks appear later. We won't talk about them right here. So you have Sam, who's the commander of the vessel, and Ursula, who's horticulturalist, I believe. Ozzy, who is pictured here to my left, who works the cargo bay, like she's a loader of cargo, cargo master. I have no idea which, but she does cargo. She's a cargoist. And then Levi, who's like a robot, a utility bot. And then Canum, who is like an engineer or some such, who starts the show. So he starts the show starving because his pod ends up in like a gigantic tree. So he is suspended and cannot get down. Now he is early on saved by a small koala sloth looking creature named Hollow, who is obviously intelligent and has some kind of telekinetic powers. And Hollow, I would say, quote unquote, communicates / manipulates / dominates Canum with memories of his estranged wife, Fiona. So the first bits of the show are just this crew surviving. You sort of get to know them a little bit and their immediate environs. And, again, Canum is trapped. Sam and Ursula are on sort of a mission to find parts or biological bits on the planet, since a lot of the stuff has uses to them, to find stuff that they can use to power up a transmitter, which they're going to use to bring the Demeter down, to bring the Demeter out of orbit and down onto the planet, to crash land it, emergency land it. I'm not exactly sure if the intent was to crash land it. It seemed like it landed pretty hard. I was like, you guys meant to do that? Right. But that's what they start. Ozzy and Levi have their own little farming thing. They have their own, miniature hovel, which is being intruded upon by these gigantic sort of weird, multiple-legged, three-tongued, sort of, I'm going to say hostile, but very destructive creatures that are very intent on sort of encroaching on Ozzy and Levi's home there. So they're just surviving, but once Sam and Ursula, and they do this fairly early on, once Sam and Ursula get their transmitter powered, they bring the Demeter down and everyone sees it, and then they start their trek, which ultimately, that's the goal, is to get to the Demeter to either get the people awake, or there's a shuttle on the Demeter, or to escape. Makes sense. It's 12 episodes. They go by reasonably quickly. I thought it was reasonably quick. 12 episodes. You know, the Vesta, the planet, is very colorful. It's very vibrant. You can sort of see some of that here. It's alien, right, with a lot of fungus and a lot of organic sort of forms and different creatures. You know, and all the creatures sort of have some weird vibe going to them, or weird thing. Like there's creatures that Sam and Ursula use. They jam their hands into them, and they inflate and they float. You know, stuff like that, right? There's stinging creatures and biting creatures, and just there's just big, right, massive three-tongued menaces that menace Ozzy and Levi early on. So it is very interesting in that sense. I think that's what people say. Like, a lot of critics are like, "Oh, it's so imaginative." I've read a couple reviews that people had, and it's like, this is the most imaginative thing I've seen in sci-fi for a long time, and so on. A lot of that. And this is what I think they're talking about when they say it's so imaginative. Is, you know, it is fairly easy early on to be captivated by all the different creatures, and it is beautiful because, you know, it's almost like an anime version of of Pandora of Avatar, like Animavatar, right? Like it's pretty, and the creature designs are cool and they are clever. So I do think that is, you know, it is visually compelling. How's that? And episode to episode, I think the journeys were compelling. The journey of all three of these characters, and they are punctuated with flashbacks back to the ship, so you can see sort of Kanan's story and his relationship with his wife, and his pressure to make this journey go well, and ultimately, you know, he is the one who very much arbitrarily makes the decision to divert the ship, and then causes all this problem. So he feels pretty bad about that, because he killed everybody for the most part. But no spoilers. So, and you see Ozzy, and Ozzy has like a new burgeoning love interest who's now in cryosleep on the ship, maybe, or if she's still alive. And you don't see as much with Sam and Ursula, aside from, you see a little bit when they're interacting with some of these other characters. But a lot of it comes down to their interaction as they travel together, right? Since really Levi's a robot, so Ozzy's alone. So you see her interacting with sort of, you know, in flashback. Same thing with Kanan. He's alone, really. Hollow only shows him his memories. And then Sam and Ursula are the ones that sort of bounce back and forth with each other. So as I said, episode to episode, I felt that the journeys were compelling. You know, as they brave the ridiculously hostile planet. It sort of felt a tiny bit like an RPG. Like if you play a tabletop RPG and you are traveling across the map, and then every few steps, like, or a JRPG, and every few steps there's a random encounter, and you have to fight it. That's what it sort of felt like, because there's so much, you know, bam, here we go, and now we're, you know, this creature appears and it's stinging us, or this creature appears and it's threatening us, and there's just a lot. There was a lot of that, and that's sort of how the adventure felt there. And I would say that Kanan has sort of an interesting arc, and his interactions with Hollow, like their relationship is sort of intriguing and turns dark, and, you know, and ultimately sort of drives a lot of the action later on. And again, I won't spoil anything, but that's sort of the a driver for a lot of the badness that happens in the late game. So I thought it was okay. Things that I sort of so I thought it was fine. I watched it. It was good. I'm going to say ultimately I thought it was fine. So bad stuff, things that I didn't quite sort of jive with, and some of this is gay. So this first part is just total gamer brain nitpick because I think it worked as a plot device to bring the meter down, but I just couldn't imagine that any giant mega corporation that's flying these giant freighters from colony to colony would have an emergency protocol that's like, oh yeah, bring this thing down. Let's crash this bad boy. That just sounds like millions of dollars down the tubes. There's a shuttle on board the ship. You find that out later. So why doesn't the transmitter? Why can't they bring the shuttle down or wake up one of the crew? Now I don't know. It could be that the ship was vented in vacuum, and thus you couldn't bring the crew down. I know that the shuttle bay was blocked. But it just felt like, it was a great plot device, because as soon as everyone sees that flaming mass coming through the atmosphere, every survivor could see it, and that immediately draws them all to get there, which was cool. But that was just one where I was like, I had a hard time letting that one go. It's like in the zombie movies or the horror movies when they stun the bad guy, but yet then they turn around and drop their weapon and go, oh wow, and then the bad guy gets up behind them, of course, right? That's same thing. I'm screaming, no, why are you crashing the ship? So it just, like I said, it's the gamer brain sort of nitpick there, but it was a good plot device. So I'm going to just let that one go. That's the conceit of the show, was that they brought the ship down, and that became the MacGuffin. Everybody heads to the ship, right? I would say that the majority of the plot really is just their journeys. You do see their interactions, their memories, and that breaks that up. But a lot of the plot was walk a little closer to the Demeter, some crazy bad thing happens. Then we walk a little closer to the Demeter, and then some other crazy bad thing happens. That was a lot of really what happened moment to moment in Scavengers Reign. And that was fine. It was fine. But sometimes I was just like, really, they just got out of a situation, and there's tentacles pulling them under the water. Really, can they not rest for 6 seconds? So it's a lot of, hey, this planet's dangerous and wacky, and hey, this planet's dangerous and wacky, and did I tell you how dangerous and wacky this planet is? There's a lot of that. The other thing which I thought sort of missed a tiny bit for me was, for all of this wonder and splendor of these alien world, a lot of it didn't necessarily make sense. It didn't seem like there was an ecology per se, as much as there was crazy, wacky stuff which was also dangerous. Now, that is another nitpick where you're like, okay, I mean, so they didn't hire Charles Darwin to write, the script or whatever. It was way more, like I said, almost like an RPG and random encounters. So that's fun. But that I'm not a scientist either. So when I'm writing a game or whatnot, I'm not always thinking about all the things that, this this thing is a is a gathering, and it feeds this creature who, I'm not thinking of all the ecology bits either, right? You're just trying to make interesting encounters. So I get it. But I will say this. There was a little too much YOLO behavior from the survivors. I don't think any of them would actually have lived because the planet was so damn dangerous. Like 99.99% of the things that you come across would kill you. And yet, all the time that these guys made, gains or whatever, whenever they tried to do something, they got the 0.001% thing that didn't kill them. So, right, there's that story that early settlers thought the people thought tomatoes were poisonous for years and years and years. So, but yet these guys have been on this planet for what, weeks, months? Let's say 6 months. And they've got all this weird stuff. Like Sam and Ursula are the worst. Now, she's a horticulturalist, so maybe that helps. But, they have these weird creatures. They literally jam their fist into these creatures, and then the creatures blow up and they float. Or there's these mollusk-like things that they stuff on their faces, and that little tentacles drill up into their nose so it can filter the air when they go into spores. And I'm like, who tried that? who thought if you're on this planet, and in the meantime, as they walk, there's something that stings you and then makes a version of you to go come and kill you. There's everything on this planet is deadly, and yet Ursula put the mollusk on her face. Like who made that first leap? So there's a little bit of Prometheus level. Oh, look, it's so cute. It's so, oh God, right? It's a little bit too much. They survived too well, and I can only imagine that they either were the luckiest survivors in the world, and maybe they are, because there's only 3 groups, and presumably everybody else that came down here was dead. So maybe they are the lucky ones, and this is survivor bias. But yeah, there's a thing where Ozzy here has lesions on her skin because these things attached to her skin, and they just made these horrible lesions on her skin. And so she happens to have her hand in water, and a fishy thing comes up and grabs and eats the lesion-y bit off her skin. And she has this great idea. So she finds this giant pool of water with bigger fish that then eat the lesions off her entire body because they're all over her. And I'm sitting there going, what about this planet makes you think that those things are eating lesions off your skin and not leaking some hideous acid toxin into the water that is dissolving your innards as we speak? Because everything else on this planet is trying to dissolve your innards. And there's one more instance that I thought was sort of crazy, where there was this weird wall of jutting bone crystalline kind of structures, and they make their way through it. Sam and Ursula are going through it, but they start to close. And then Sam runs through, but Ursula gets distracted by this little light, and she walks over there and plays with this light thingy, getting closed in. And again, I thought, and then Sam berates her for it. He's like, what are you doing? Stop it. Don't do that. And she gets angry at him for daring to tell her, hey, don't do the stupid thing because this planet's out to kill you. And I'm sitting there thinking, again, what made you think that possibly wasn't a lure to keep you in here so the thing could digest you? And every time they made those choices, it worked for them. And I thought that was a little too super plot convenient, right? So, again, not a huge deal. It doesn't detract But I did think at some point, yeah, these people are all dead. Like this is like they they they're like the scientists. I'll put that in air quotes. Scientists on the movie Prometheus, but they lucked out. But they got super lucky. So I enjoyed my 12 episodes. I think the big thing was all of that is totally forgivable. I thought a little plot device and so on. What actually, honest to goodness, bothered me. Not shouldn't say bothered. What actually lowered my grade for this show was that I thought the payoff at the end was pretty non-existent. At the end, the big bad is defeated by the power of friendship and an evolution lesson slideshow. Like, I'm not sure what the actual it was. You know what? And maybe the writers were going for this. It was literally Deus Ex Machina. Literally Deus Ex Machina. And for a sci-fi show, and I'll put that in air quotes, and we'll talk about that in a second, for a sci-fi show that has showed you this alien planet and beat you over the head with this alien planet, it just seemed very arbitrary. But again, I think it sort of had to be because they hadn't really set up any logical or scientific way for the big bad to be defeated. So he just had to be defeated by anime, right? In the anime when Dragon Ball Z and this guy shoots a bolt and this guy shoots a bolt and then they do. That was almost the sort of impression I got of the end was, yeah, the guy who screamed loudest won, sort of. So I did not enjoy the ending as much as I enjoyed the 12 episodes, up till the ending. I thought the ending, I was actually sort of interested. I was actually thinking, how are they going to beat this thing? And it just turns out they just sort of won. And I thought that was a little bit weak, in my opinion. But and I thought, and so that's sort of where I ended up with it. I watched it. I watched the 12 episodes. I watched them in quick succession. I binged it over the course of a couple nights, so it was compelling enough. I thought the ending was a little bit of a letdown, and it's pretty weak in terms of its science fiction. So I feel science fiction is sort of hard to do. And so for instance, I don't really count Star Wars as science fiction. I barely count Star Trek, most episodes as science fiction. I always feel that science fiction, some episodes are. I think Star Trek sort of vacillates per series and an episode of series. I always feel that sci-fi sort of requires or begs for our interaction with the technology or interaction with the science to be meaningful to the story, to be somehow germane to the story and the resolution of the story. And here I feel it was just set dressing. Here it was, look at all these creatures and, oh, look how clever these guys are because they stuck the crabby thing to their face and it made them breathe. Yay, right? Like that was the level of it there. And there wasn't enough setup of the science or anything else so that the ending really couldn't be clever or it couldn't wrap it up nicely. It had to sort of be arbitrary. So it was a little bit, it wasn't science fiction with animated stylings. It was more anime with sci-fi backdrop more than anything else. And so I give it a solid C+. Like it's like IMDb was rated like 8.7 out of 10. I think that's high. I think I'd give it a 7. Yeah, 7 or 7.5. But that's sort of where I'm at. Certainly worse things to watch. If you have, the 12 episodes worth of time and you can catch it on Netflix, no reason not to. It's not bad. It's not great. And there's a lot of things I would probably watch ahead of it. So it's very much in the middle. C or C+. Let's say C. Well done. Teacher, there's your grade. C. You got it. So I don't know why I even cared enough. Presumably I cared enough to say something. Which is not, I don't care enough to talk about a lot of other TV shows or whatever. Maybe we'll start doing this a little bit if I actually watch something all the way through, which I do not watch a lot of shows or movies. But when I do, maybe I'll come and talk about them, and we can comment. So that's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.